The Sacramento Kings have not made the playoffs since the 2005-2006 season, nor have they had an above 500 record since then. And in response to that, the Kings front office and ownership are desperate to finally get the Kings into some form of postseason basketball, even if that is just via the play-in tournament. That was made very evident by their trade deadline and acquiring Domantas Sabonis. The trade was the definition of a win-now move, just a rarity to see a win-now move from a team not even in the play-in tournament. But the winning even still will be limited. The winning window is fairly short, and things could really fall apart afterwards for this Kings organization. Domantas Sabonis is arguably currently better than Tyrese Haliburton. Even that is not a given. It's arguable. And that may not be an argument for long. Domantas Sabonis is a greater positional need for the Kings, certainly. But he's not leaps and bounds better than Tyrese Haliburton. The wing quality and depth has been the biggest issue for the Kings over the last couple of years. And although Sabonis is not naturally a wing, he will play at the 4 spot and fill that role for them so that guys like Metu and Mo Harkless and now newly acquired Justin Holiday can come off of the bench as opposed to having to start one of those guys that ideally shouldn't really be in a starting lineup for you. Sabonis and Fox have the upside to be a solid star duo as 2 borderline all-star players. They will be alongside Donte DiVincenzo, assuming he gets re-signed, Rashawn Holmes, Davion Mitchell, and whoever else they decide to retain or surround around them. It's a fine team. It's a team that can look to compete for the playing games, but that's probably their peak, even if Fox continues to play much better with Tyrese Haliburton out of the team. Now, with the Kings making a move to push towards the playing game, I can understand it. It makes sense. This is a Kings organization that is starving for success. They are desperate for some form of postseason basketball and to actually have some reason to get their fans excited. And I'm not completely against it given how long the Kings have been out of the playoffs for. Trying to give some reason for their fans and the league to care about them to some extent is understandable. But I would argue having one of the most promising young guards in the NBA in Tyrese Haliburton long-term, someone who vocally expressed how he wanted to be in Sacramento, if you listen to JJ Redick's podcast, you would say that if you asked the people on Sacramento's team who wanted to be in Sacramento the most, it was Haliburton. And you traded him as one of the best young guards in the league. I would argue that being the centerpiece of your future and improving basketball in Sacramento is better to build success for an organization, is better for fans to care about your team and to want to support an organization. And the fact that Tyrese Haliburton was around long-term is very important to this, especially considering now the window of success for Sacramento is very short compared to how long they would have had Tyrese Haliburton around for. Sacramento currently sit in the 13th seed, behind an improved New Orleans team, a Spurs team led by all-star DeJounte Murray, and a Trailblazers team who are led by a young rising star in Anthony Simons. It is going to be an uphill battle for them to get into the play-in tournament this year. Assuming they do miss out on the play-in tournament this year, then Sacramento only have 2 years left with Domantas Sabonis. Then he will be a free agent. And given the Sacramento Kings are not exactly a team with a big market or a great history for signing or keeping big-name free agents, and big market mean in NBA terms, not in size or population or the fact that they're in California. If people want to play in California, they're not going to Sacramento. And assuming Domantas Sabonis continues to be an all-star caliber player, which is a fair assumption at this point given his recent production and the fact he's not even yet in his prime, it seems likely Domantas Sabonis will walk and sign elsewhere in 2024 free agency. It is also worth noting Rashawn Holmes only has 2 years left of team control after this season. Harrison Barnes only has 1. Same for Justin Holiday. Jeremy Lamb is an unrestricted free agent, and Donte DiVincenzo is a restricted free agent at the end of the season. On the flip side, Tyrese Haliburton would have been under team control for the Kings for the next 6 to 7 years. Alongside another 4 years for De'Aaron Fox, you would still have Davion Mitchell in team control for the next 7 to 8 years, alongside whoever else you would draft over the next couple seasons. That would set you with at least a 6-year window to build around Tyrese Haliburton and to build a team to get into the playoffs. Which, around Tyrese Haliburton, even if they did trade away De'Aaron Fox, I don't think is an unrealistic goal or objective to have. Ultimately, the Kings are now left in a situation where they have 2 years to try and get into the postseason with a team that isn't necessarily a projected top 10 team in the West. And in 2 years' time, they may be left with only De'Aaron Fox for 2 more years, and possibly asking out and being traded before being an unrestricted free agent. Davion Mitchell, assuming they re-sign him after his rookie contract, and Dante DiVincenzo, assuming he is re-signed, along with whoever else they draft. The Kings are doing a great job at forming a roster that is close to being a playing game team, which has its upside, especially for this Kings organization that has struggled to make the postseason for so long. But trying to build a team that is just good enough to get into the playoffs has not worked for a long time now in Sacramento. And even though the narrative is that they have been rebuilding for a long time, the Kings have only had one top 3 pick since their last playoff appearance. That's it. And he's not even on the team anymore. That's Marvin Bagley, who flopped and is now playing some of the best basketball of his career in Detroit, given a very short sample size. But the fact that they only have one top 3 pick over the last 15 years is relatively surprising, given how much the Kings have been looked at as a rebuilding team and a poverty franchise in the NBA by many. And it makes you wonder that if the Kings truly bottomed out for a few years, if they got multiple top 5 picks, with hopefully a couple of those being top 3 picks, they may finally actually have a shot at acquiring elite level talent. Now, sure, maybe their front office would screw it up like with Marvin Bagley, but they would at least have a better chance. The fact they've had so few top 3 picks is genuinely surprising. It would give them the upside of being more than just a team sitting around the edge of the playing games, because right now they just have no great upside and no guarantee of a postseason appearance ahead of them. Sure, the Kings have made a lot of bad draft picks over the years. Sure, the Kings have had questionable head coaches. They've had poor player development. Their front office in general has just made some very poor decisions. That is unquestionable. But even with those things in mind, if you have 2 to 3 years of getting a top 5 pick, with maybe 1 or 2 top 3 picks, you would have to imagine, even for the Kings front office, that you would manage to acquire a couple of borderline all-stars to higher level talents. It could finally get the Kings to be a team that could consistently get into the playoffs and not just be on the fringes and struggle to make it every year. But for now, they remain on the fringes. They sit on the outside looking in at a postseason appearance, having traded away arguably the best young asset they've had since their last playoff appearance.